The world's capital of astronomy got an up-close look at a solar eclipse. Hi there, everyone. This is Jeff, and you are listening to episode 172 of Plain English, the podcast for learning English with current events. You can find all the episode resources for today's episode at plainenglish.com/172, including, as always, a word-for-word transcript. Coming up on today's episode, a total solar eclipse cut through parts of Argentina and Chile earlier this month. The eclipse was fun for tourists and useful for astronomers who could put their telescopes to good use during the day. Speaking of put to good use, that is the phrase that we'll review toward the end of the episode. And it's Monday, so we'll close with a quote. Today we have an astronomy-related quote for you, so just wait for that. Is the IELTS exam in your future? If so, you'll want to check out the IELTS Fundamentals course from Chris and his team at IELTS Advantage. The course is free, and it covers the strategies you need to get your best score on the IELTS exam. Enroll now at plainenglish.com/IELTS. A solar eclipse darkened the sky over Chile and Argentina, giving astronomers and tourists a unique view of the sun. A total solar eclipse happens when the moon passes directly between the Earth and the sun and blocks the view of the sun from the Earth. When an eclipse happens, a narrow band of the Earth is in the so-called zone of totality. That's the tiny strip of the Earth where the moon perfectly blocks the view of the sun. The sky darkens, and often the temperature falls for a few minutes. In Chile, the daytime temperature fell by about 2 to 3 degrees Celsius during the eclipse. This time, the only inhabited parts of the Earth that experienced the eclipse were in Chile and Argentina. And fortunately for astronomers, the zone of totality passed right through northern Chile's Atacama Desert, which has some of the clearest skies in the world. The eclipse passed over La Silla Observatory, home to some of the world's most powerful telescopes, which can usually only be used at night. This time, though, they could be put to use studying the sun's corona, the outer layer that is usually not visible. The eclipse lasted for almost 2.5 minutes at La Silla. Chile's president, Sebastián Piñera, said that Chile is the world capital of astronomy. He continued by saying, "We are the eyes and senses of humanity to be able to look, observe, and study the stars and the universe." The paths of future solar eclipses are well known in advance, but the one wild card is the weather. If it's cloudy, you won't be able to see the eclipse. But of course it will still get darker and cooler. That was the situation in Buenos Aires, the capital of Argentina, where clouds blocked the view of the eclipse, leaving the city in a midday haze. But many towns and cities did have a clear view of the eclipse, and tens of thousands of observers put on their cardboard glasses and watched the show. Everyone had their own style. Some brought yoga mats, others jumped and cheered when they saw the eclipse. Observers in one town chanted, "Viva Chile!" I'm not entirely sure why, but it must have felt right at the time. The city of La Serena was the first city to experience the eclipse at 3:22 p.m. local time on July 2nd. The town of 200,000 residents saw an influx of 300,000 visitors. The population of the town more than doubled just for the eclipse. Hotels throughout the eclipse zone were sold out, needless to say. In Argentina, the popular place to view the eclipse was in Cuyo, the wine-producing region that had the longest exposure to the eclipse. You can't look directly at a solar eclipse while it's happening. You can go blind from doing so. You need to see the eclipse through special glasses that filter the light to protect your eyes. An eclipse happens somewhere on Earth about once every 18 months. The next solar eclipse will be in December 2020 and will also cut across Chile and Argentina, though farther south. Aldo from Chile was in the crowds watching the eclipse. He sent me a picture of himself with his eclipse glasses on, all ready to go. He said the atmosphere was mysterious. The temperature dropped, the shadows were long, a really special day. I saw a little bit of the 2017 solar eclipse in the United States. Chicago was not in the zone of totality, so we didn't have the total darkness during the day. It did get a little dark and hazy-like mid-afternoon that day, and we did have our eclipse glasses, so we got to see it. But I have to say that the experience of seeing the eclipse wasn't all it was cracked up to be. It wasn't as good as all the hype, in my opinion. Today, I would like to say hello to Camilo from Medellin, Colombia. I think he set a new plain English record. He listened to all the episodes in a month and a half. He listens on his motorcycle as he goes to work near the international airport in Medellin. I remember the taxi ride from the airport into town. It's very hilly and a nice long trip. I can just imagine Camilo taking those curves on his motorcycle on the way to work, listening to plain English. That sounds great. Thanks, Camilo, for being with us. Do you have to take the IELTS exam? I used to hate taking standardized tests. But at one point, I thought I wanted to go to business school, so I took the GMAT test. That's the university entrance exam for business school, GMAT. One thing I learned from that experience is that standardized tests like the GMAT and the IELTS will, to a certain extent, measure what they're trying to measure. Your English abilities, for example. But a large part of having success on the test is learning the test. It's not enough to know a lot of English. You have to know the test. Listen, other people are going into that test well prepared with a strategy for each question, and those are the people you're competing with. You need to do the same thing and have a test-taking strategy. And that's why the free IELTS Fundamentals course is so valuable. This 5-part course takes you through every part of the test, every type of question, and teaches you what to do, how to respond, how to do your best, how to get the IELTS score you deserve on every part of that test. I mentioned it's free, right? And it's very high quality. So check that out if IELTS is in your future. plainenglish.com/IELTS. Today's expression is put to use. Here's how you initially heard it. The telescopes in Chile are normally used at night, but during the eclipse, they could be put to use during the day. When you put something to use, you take something that was once idle, not doing anything, and you make it do something. You make it work. The telescopes are usually idle during the day. No sense looking up at the sun with a powerful telescope. All you'd see is the sun's light. The telescopes are normally used only at night. They're idle during the day. But just this once, they could be put to use during the day. They could be brought into service. They could be used productively during the day, instead of just sitting idle. During the eclipse, astronomers could use the telescopes to study the sun's corona, the outer layer that is normally not visible. Have you ever volunteered for something and you find that you don't quite know what to do? You show up, you're ready to help, you're ready to work, you just don't know what to do. So you might approach someone in charge and say, "Put me to use. I want to help. I'm not doing anything. Put me to use. Put me to work." You can often say, "Put to good use." When you put something to good use, you're using it for a good or productive purpose. So many of you are learning English for work or travel. I'm sure you put your English to good use every day. You make it worthwhile. You do something good with it. You might say you want a job where you can put your skills to good use. That means you want a job where you can use those skills. You've got them. You just want to put them to good use. Time for the quote of the week. This will be brief this week. It's from Plato, the Greek philosopher. Here it is. Astronomy compels the soul to look upwards and leads us from this world to another. I picked that one because a lot of what people thought about astronomy and the earth and the stars in the age of Plato was wrong, but a lot of it was right. Astronomy is one of those fields that I know very, very little about, but it just amazes me that humanity over the years, over the centuries, has been able to piece together this complicated story of the heavens, where the stars are, what they're made of, how far away they are, what a black hole is, what a black hole looks like. Remember that one? It's really incredible. So I'll leave you with our astronomy quote from today from the Greek philosopher Plato. Astronomy compels the soul to look upwards and leads us from this world to another. That's all for today. This was a little shorter than normal. JR and I are working hard on another project that we'll be able to tell you about very soon. So this episode and the next few will probably be a little shorter than normal. Remember that JR sends out additional resources with every episode to our email subscribers. Those resources include a summary of each show, an explanation of one additional word or phrase that we used on the show, plus links to English articles that I use to prepare the program. So if something catches your eye or your ear, you can read more about it. Sign up for those emails at plainenglish.com/mail, M-A-I-L. It's really easy and so worth it. plainenglish.com/mail. JR and I will be back with another exciting episode of Plain English on Thursday. See you then. If you enjoy listening to Plain English, then I'd like you to consider joining Plain English Plus. With video lessons, faster audio, flashcards, and online courses, it's the best way to take your English to the next level. Visit plainenglish.com/plus to read all about it.